Great, thanks, Tim, and happy to be here to talk to you guys today. As Tim said, Novonix is a company focused on battery materials and innovation, really to support the growth in the electric vehicle and energy storage system market. So my background very quickly before I jump into the company, I've been in the battery materials space for about 10 years, a little over 10 years, working on technologies to advance battery lifetime, new material synthesis methods, evaluation, all in the vein of how to build long life batteries at lower costs. In addition to working for Novonix, founding one of the business units now that I'll speak about briefly, I also spent 2 years working at Tesla, leading a team around materials evaluation before coming back in 2017 and running the groups within Novonix to date. So if we look at the first slide, it'll go through the company structure. If we want to hop forward one, thanks. So we're listed under the NVX ticker, as Tim said. We currently have an application lodged to have a listing in North America on the OTC market. That is just waiting our audited financials from this fiscal year that just closed, which should finish by September. But really, the listed vehicle is essentially a holding company which contains our two and now third operating company within it, which are all North American based. The first of which is our Novonix Battery Technology Solution Company. This was the business I founded back in 2013, really focused on R&D technologies to help enable new innovation in the battery materials and battery sector. We work closely with the university on new materials partnerships. We have full cell building capability to evaluate our materials, and we design and sell equipment for battery lifetime evaluation to all the major cell manufacturers, many auto OEMs, consumer electronics OEMs. And so we work with many relevant industry players around how they look at battery evaluation. That group really supports our technology development in new materials, as well as supporting our research and development and battery materials evaluation within our pure graphite business. So in the middle there, our pure graphite business is focused on synthetic graphite material, which I'll speak a little bit more about. This is really our first commercial opportunity that's spun out of our research ecosystem. We're at a stage now where we've gone through our product development internally and started to go into the commercialization phase. We have a conditional sales agreement in place with Samsung SDI to start delivering material to them later this year, as well as an MOU in place with Sanyo, which is the cell building division of Panasonic, to further evaluate our production samples after positive pilot line results. And some of the recent announcements, if you've been following the company, are around our new cathode technologies. So within our battery technology solution group, we've patented new processing technologies to make dry synthesis cathode materials, which can lead to lower cost materials with the same performance or potentially even higher performance than what's in the market today. So this is really where our company focuses, is developing technologies to support long life battery materials at lower costs. And if you look at the next slide, it's really showing why this is a relevant market to be in right now. The growth in battery demand over the course of this decade is going to be huge, and most of that is on the back of electric vehicles and energy storage systems. So consumer electronics will continue to grow, but the battery usage in something like a laptop compared to a vehicle is so minute that the materials that are needed for vehicles and energy storage are really what are going to drive demand over the course of this decade. And that market's supposed to grow by about a factor of 10. So between the anode graphite market and the cathode market, it's about 10 billion US dollar market today, growing to 50 to 100 billion over the course of the next 5 to 10 years. And the demand on those materials is high performance and low cost. And that's really where all of our innovation is focused. And our businesses are based in North America. And if you look at the next slide, we're finally starting to see growth in battery manufacturing happening outside of Asia. So historically, China has really had a stranglehold on battery manufacturing. It's become incredibly apparent over the last number of years, the dependency of the market on Chinese production. And so finally, you're starting to see major announcements. And of course, Tesla's factory in Nevada, which has been operating for a number of years now, was really the first demonstration of battery manufacturing outside of Asia. And now you see about 130 gigawatt hours of projected capacity to come online in the United States. And Tesla actually just, through their investor call yesterday, talked about their new factory that they'll be building in Austin, Texas, which is not even included in these numbers. And Europe similarly is growing significantly. And so there's a demand now for batteries to be built outside of Asia, which require the materials to also not be dependent on Chinese and Asian sources. So if you look at the next slide, these new battery factories are all supporting vehicles. And so there's a lot of talk in the industry about the idea of a 1,000,000-mile battery for electric vehicles. Can we build lithium-ion cells or power vehicle for 1,000,000 miles? And really there's three critical components to the battery systems that are going to enable this type of performance: the anode, the cathode, and the electrolyte. And our team works on technology across the spectrum. Of course, our pure graphite anode material is our first commercial opportunity that's scaling now with contracts in place with customers. Our new technologies around cathode can lead to lower cost cathode materials. And we've been filing IP around some of our advanced electrolyte systems. And I'll show a bit of data about that at the end. But what I really want to kind of zoom in on in the couple minutes that we have is the pure graphite business. So if you look at the next slide, why are people interested in our material? And we won't go through everything here. I believe these slides will be available later for folks to look at. So the critical factors in a graphite material are their energy density, the cycle life, the cost, and the purity. And really what we're able to do is produce materials that are competitive with the best in class in the world at lower cost, and being able to do it outside of Asia, completely domestically sourced materials in the US, processed at our facility in Tennessee, and then being delivered to our customer either domestically or abroad. And really this demand is not about having a major breakthrough in performance gains. It's about incremental wins. The battery market's going to continue to grow and gain adoption by these steps forward in higher performance and lower cost. And that's where our material is really focused. And when you look at what this means in a performance standpoint, on the next slide, we really focus on long life materials like I talked about, and how can we support things like 1,000,000-mile battery performance. And so we do all of our own testing and evaluation in full lithium-ion cell formats, cylindrical 18650 cells or pouch style cells that we build on our pilot line. We build compared to state-of-the-art materials that we source from leading vendors as part of our programs. You know, everything we do is about ensuring that we know where our product fits in the market. And so these are some charts showing the performance of cells built all head-to-head, except for the one labeled Tesla, which was taken from a Model S vehicle, and showing what we measure in our R&D throughput of coulombic efficiency, where cells that have a higher value, closer to 1, will have a longer cycle life. And really then in the long-term cycling performance, you can see our material compared to commercial synthetic graphite materials from the market, compared to a Tesla cell out of a vehicle, and compared to natural graphite sourced from leading players in China. And so, you know, you can see these look like maybe small benefits over the synthetic materials, but these can lead to much longer cycle life over the course of thousands of cycles, which are what these cells really need to support. So this type of data, the ability to build leading class materials outside of Asia, is really what sparked interest in our customer and potential additional customers. And so on the next slide is really looking at our current commercialization status, which is our agreement in place with Samsung to deliver them 500 tons of our synthetic graphite material starting in October of this year. And then along with that agreement, they signed an R&D collaboration because they saw the benefit to our research ecosystem, our ability to innovate in the material space, improve those performance through our testing technologies. And we're continuing to work with them on other programs. And then secondly, Sanyo, as I said, is a subsidiary of Panasonic, which builds their cells. After sampling our material from the pilot line, they've signed an MOU to further sample the production line materials and then move toward a contract negotiation after we can provide those materials in adequate time for testing. And so we hope to advance both of those relationships significantly over the course of this fiscal year that we've just entered. And so our roadmap for pure graphite, which is where a lot of our critical focus is on the next slide, which is the capital raise that Tim spoke about, that we just completed about a month ago, really funds this phase 1 initial ramp. The next 2 years, scaling to 2,000 tons per year, delivering and hopefully expanding on the Samsung contract and bringing on new customers, all of this based out of our Chattanooga facility. The 2,000 ton per year run rate is really where the company becomes a healthy, strong EBIT company. And then on the back of those deliveries and the expansion, we hope to move into our phase 2 and phase 3 execution plans to scale to 25,000 tons or 100,000 tons over the course of this decade. And we'll do a lot of that financing on the back of contracts from hopefully folks like Samsung and Sanyo, and through debt vehicles. And so this is really where we want to take this business. And in the growth of this market, this is making us a major player, but let's say 10 to 15% market share in the space. And so our goal is to become a leader outside of Asia in delivering this high performance material. And earlier on, I talked about million-mile battery and the need for advanced materials in anode, cathode, and electrolyte. And I focus mostly on our anode business, as this is our furthest commercial success. But in the last slide, what I want to show is kind of where this technology roadmap leads in terms of progress. And so if you flip forward, you'll see that the kind of current state of traditional NMC graphite cells can last hundreds of cycles, which when you look at what that translates to in equivalent driving miles, maybe it's 100,000 miles. You can build cells with these single crystal cathode materials, which you can go look at some of our announcements about, that can last over 500,000 miles. You build those with commercial materials and better electrolyte systems, and you can reach million-mile cell performance. But when you do things like switch to our anode material, this is where you see these huge gains. And you can see, with these forecast lines that are just used to show some indication, we're going to be well above our 80% capacity retention out at the million-mile mark. And so this is really where our company is focused on driving performance to support these types of applications with lower cost. And so on the last slide, the conclusion really is what we've talked about. We're delivering battery materials focused on the EV and ESS market. We have core competencies across all areas of cell technology focused on lowering costs. We've demonstrated these technological advantages in performance, and we've brought customers to our first business, our pure graphite business. And we are the only company to have successfully done that from North America or Europe to sign a contract with one of the major cell manufacturers. And we hope to build things like our cathode technology into other commercial successes. And so we want to be a tier 1 supplier of materials in this rapidly growing space. And with that, I'll leave a few minutes for Q&A.
Great, Chris. Great presentation. We have an enormous audience online at the moment. A couple of technical questions. Maybe we've got some analysts online here, but one of the charts there, you show that battery materials demand could grow by 10 times in 2030. And the chart suggests a more moderate growth in lithium demand compared to the other materials that you showed, like aluminium, nickel, copper, etc. Can you talk to that in the context of what that means for your company?
So specifically in terms of the lithium growth relative to the other materials, sorry? Yeah, sure. So I think you can find a number of reports that will show this growth at a different stage in terms of whether they think it's going to be 10x by the end of the decade or even more. Our company is focused on the active materials. This chart was more focused on the raw metal materials. So we're focused on taking those raw materials and converting them into battery ready materials. And so, while you look at things like nickel specifically or cobalt specifically, we're focused more about the cathode final composition, which isn't explicitly outlined in this chart. And so in terms of the growth of those materials relative to lithium, I think it's that the fraction of them seems to be about right to me, without kind of going through the numbers, more cleanly than that.
Sure. Okay. Thank you. Another question. The US Department of Energy has stated a goal for the industry to achieve an extreme fast charging battery by 2028. The aim is to have 80% battery capacity charged within 15 minutes. Fast charging of battery causes degradation of the battery life, yet the market is talking about the million-mile battery. Can you talk about those developments there? I know you did touch on them.
Sure, yeah. Fast charge is really an important area of focus right now. The two are not mutually exclusive, right? Reaching this million-mile cycle life performance as well as fast charge. But, whoever brought this question is correct that fast charging traditionally has, a negative impact on the cycle life. And actually, if you go through what Tesla talks about, being the first people to really deploy this type of work in scale, they say this, right? And so part of our programs and our product development programs are all focused on how can we achieve higher energy density, higher power density, and lower cost. My personal opinion is that longer term fast charging will not be as paramount as people think it is today, because right now it's serving as a safety net to people who have fear of range anxiety. And when people really start to get in electric vehicles and get out of their garage every morning with 500 kilometers of range and realize they don't drive 500 kilometers every day, I think you'll actually see the kind of need for fast charging for vehicles to not be as great as people say it is today. And of course, things like autonomy could drive that further. So there are some competing aspects there, but all of those are active programs in our product development pipeline.
Okay, great. And just the last question, we do have a lot more questions. We're going to follow this up with an article, but where do you want the company to be in 10 years' time?
Yeah, I think in 10 years' time, really our goal is to be a leading supplier of battery materials, with a focus outside of Asia and not just in the anode space. Like I talked mostly today about our pure graphite business, but we have opportunities now, especially with some great patented technology now in the cathode space and our electrolyte programs, where we want to be seen as a diversified battery materials company that's supporting people make lower cost, higher performance batteries to move to, a decarbonized society. That's really our goal.